What's up? It's hashtag AskLauren. So today's Ask Lauren is all about awkward convos about money, and I did a call out on social media asking you guys to send in all of your questions about this. Interac is sponsoring and collaborating with me on this video, and I really wanted to work with them because they're a Canadian company and they've really made my life so much easier and way less awkward when it comes to handling money and trying to handle money like an adult. I am an adult, but sometimes I think it's taken me a long time to get to this point where I feel like I'm secure with money. I feel like I know how to handle it, I know how to deal with it, and I kind of am getting better at having conversations about it. So hopefully I can offer you guys some advice. So I'm gonna jump right in here. I got so many questions. I got really great questions from you, and I tried to pick the best ones. So let's go. At Kaireen624 said, how do you ask a serious partner about their financial status when making a big step together, such as a house or marriage? Okay. So I think just in terms of how you have this conversation is you need to have this conversation. And I think if you're with somebody and you consider them your serious life partner that you want to spend the rest of your life with, and you want to buy a house and you want to get married, then you really need to open up the dialogue and communication about finances, and you can't get nervous and you can't be weird about it. And one of you may be in a less stable financial situation than the other. If you're that person, I think that you have to be very honest. Don't lie or gloss over and make things sound like they're more together and organized than they really are. You just have to be totally transparent about your finances with each other. And the other person needs to be willing to do that too, whether they make a lot of money or less money than you. I think once you start getting hesitant about this, or you start kind of not being totally transparent, that's when the communication breakdown happens. And that's essentially the whole thing about a successful relationship, is you need to have open communication. So that's getting into more relationship dynamic, but it really starts there. I think if you have open communication, then talking about money should be no different than talking about groceries. It really shouldn't. So, you may need to do some self-evaluation before bringing up the conversation to your partner to make sure that you're in a good headspace before you talk about it. But just know that you should be fully forthcoming. And so again, I can't decide for you what you're going to do, but let's just say your partner has more money than you and you're deciding to buy a house, and you're kind of figuring out, well, are we going to split it, or how is this going to work? You kind of just need to say I can contribute this much to the down payment. And if you're going to contribute a little bit more, are you okay with that? If you're going to share life with someone, money shouldn't be an issue. You shouldn't be nickel and diming each other. It should just be what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine, I think. That's just my particular opinion. I was always in a situation where things were pretty even. For instance, the house that I bought with my partner, we split the down payment, but he put in more money into the renovations. But that's an investment into our future and the kind of investment you're putting in the house so you can sell it for more later. So again, these are just choices you make in the moment. Maybe things don't work out the way you planned, but we were comfortable with the situation at the time, and we had to live with the situation afterwards when we split the house and split the money. So that's just a personal example to give you, but you should just have full transparency when it comes to having that conversation. Also, for me personally, I don't know why, but conversations about money with friends, family, and coworkers is just hella awkward. Even though I'm in my mid-30s, this scenario always happens with a group of my friends who are full adults with full-time jobs. We'll be at a group dinner or a group thing, and we all need to split the bill. And it just ends up being weird for some reason and way more complicated than it needs to be. There's always someone who's a little bit more generous with their money. I'm not the cheap one. I will literally cover a whole bill just so that I don't have to have the conversation and talk about money and how much who owes what at the dinner table. It's just who cares, you'll pay for the next one. But if you do find yourself in these situations, I feel Interac e-transfer is just the best way to handle this, because there's all these new features that you can do. You can do auto deposit. You can request money right from your bank to your friends. So let's say you do cover a whole bill and it's $200 or $100 or whatever. You can just not talk about it, and then later request money via Interac e-transfer transactions and say, hey, you owe me $35 for that dinner the other night. Cool, the person just sends it to you. And I think that just makes things so much easier, cleaner, simple. Everybody should be accepting and not defensive about these types of requests. And so that's just why I think Interac e-transfer has helped me so much, because this happens with my friends all the time and in social settings, and I kind of hate it. I just wish it would not happen, but it does. And I was telling you kind of about like this house and selling things, but I'm actually moving soon, and it's actually very helpful now because I'm going back to paying rent in an apartment, which is amazing, and we'll get to that in another video and you'll see it. But I can send Interac e-transfer transactions now to my landlord, and I can schedule them in advance, which is amazing because I can just keep track of it all in my bank account. And so that can be very handy for you if you have a roommate, or you pay rent to your parents, or you and your roommate split rent and one person owes money in advance and all that other stuff. So let's just, you know, get open and simple and chill about money and social negotiations about money and all that kind of stuff. At Soft on Communism said, how do you tell your boss that you're not going to do work that's not part of your job without getting paid extra for it? Okay, this is probably a very common scenario where you have a job and you have a role, then all of a sudden they're like, we'd love if you could do this, and we'd love if you could do this. And oftentimes it probably takes time outside of normal work hours for you to complete these tasks or do the research or whatever. I think this one's a bit tricky because there's a fine line. It depends on where you work, your relationship with your boss, and how far you're willing to go in your job and what stage you're at. Like maybe if you are super new to this job, it might be worth the investment in time and maybe not getting paid to sort of prove yourself or go above and beyond, because that may help you further your career path at this job or this company. Whereas if you've been there for a long time and you've been getting taken advantage of for a while, I do think it's time for you to put your foot down and say, I would love to do that, but you know, it takes this amount of time or this amount of effort or this amount of creativity and research, etc., etc. And I do think I should be paid a little bit extra for this task. Maybe could I just bill you as a contractor with my hourly rate or something like that? Again, all of this comes down to being honest and transparent, but I think it really depends on the nuances of the situation. And I think in some cases it could be worth your time to do it for free because it might help you in the end. And I think it's up to you to kind of like suss that out. But I'm a big proprietor of saying no. I've done a video like this before about not doing work for free. And for the most part, I do agree with that. But sometimes there's these subtle situations where investing your time and money for free can help you in the end. So you do kind of have to be a judge of your own character for that, and maybe ask your friends, your coworkers what they think, and then really just like listen to your gut about what might be the best thing to do there. At Calm Villager, how do you make sure you're getting paid fairly, whether asking for a promotion or a pay raise? For instance, when you were working in entertainment or when you were creating your cookbook. So the idea of getting paid fairly is a huge topic, especially when we're talking about a very relevant thing right now with like inequality between men and women, which is just a thing. That's just the case. I've been in a few situations, like once when I worked in television, I knew for a fact that my co-host, who was male, who started way after me, he was more new, he was getting paid more than me, and that pissed me off, and I ended up approaching my boss about it. But the problem with that whole thing is that, I don't know why we had this conversation, but we had a conversation about what we were making, and he willingly told me, and I was a bit hesitant to tell him what I was making. So once I knew what he was making, which was a stupid move on his part to tell me that, you know, it caused a lot of inner turmoil for me. So sometimes I think I actually across the board don't think it's very good to talk about your salary with your coworkers, because that's the kind of rift it can cause. There's a lot of information online, I think, about like general salary ranges for certain types of jobs. And I think maybe asking people who work in similar industries but not the exact same company as you could be helpful in gauging what you should be getting paid for. But I think you also know in your heart, like whether you think you're getting paid fairly or not. Most of the stories I hear, people don't think they're getting paid fairly. They think they're getting underpaid. And I'm sure that is the case, because a company's interest is in probably paying you slightly below average. At least that's what I came across in television. I always felt like I was getting paid okay for what I did in entertainment, but a lot of the time, especially in entertainment or creative industries, salary ranges and hourly wages are like super broad and all over the place. And it's actually still the case with like what I do now. Like when people ask for rates or what you get paid, like some people are charging like exorbitant amounts, like way above what they should be, and other people aren't charging enough. And it's just creating this weird sort of just like a Wild West type environment, especially when we're talking about brand partnerships and social influencing and like what you should charge for your social following and stuff like that. As a rule of thumb, I don't really talk about it with people. I've tried to be somewhat transparent with you in the past about talking about how much money I make, but I only do it with people that I trust and that I'm really close with, because I just think it causes problems when you talk too much about it. There's not much more I can say about that. I mean, it's a real gut check thing. Like, you need to feel comfortable talking about it if you're going to talk about it with people, and you need to have worked out all of your own like beliefs and like self-worth issues before you talk to someone else about what they make if you do the same job, because it's going to cause it's just going to cause some rifts inside of you, I think, once you know. And if you think so-and-so doesn't do as much work as you, but then they're getting paid more, like, what's that going to do to you to know that? And then are you going to handle it professionally by asking for a raise? You have to like kind of ask yourself all these questions first. So in terms of making sure you're getting paid fairly, I think do some outside research first with people that you're not super close with, that you aren't going to feel resentful or bitter about when you do know what the rates are and if you're not getting those rates. And then maybe try to explore within your company, again, having that conversation with your superior or your boss about it, and saying, I think there's room for me to move up here, or like those kinds of conversations. I'll be honest with you, I never really had these conversations, especially in television, because we were put on salary and we would just get an incremental percentage renewed. Every time we renewed our contract every year, they would just bump us up a percentage, and there was no negotiating that. Or at least it seemed like there was no negotiating that, and I never did it. It was just like, here's your raise, here you go. But like, I know between all of the TV hosts, we were all getting paid different wages. And that was just based on time that we were there, and probably sex. And like, I don't really know what people were making. And so sometimes it can be tough, and sometimes you just have to live with it. I don't know. And I feel like as I've gotten older, I've always made more money as I move through different careers. And as I feel like I'm always getting bigger and better, meaning I've never like taken a dip in the middle of this. Like, and I think that just also has to do with like your attitude about money. And my attitude about money has shifted so much in the last like 4 years, and especially now being an entrepreneur, my attitude about money has shifted a lot, and I'm a lot more open to it, and I'm a lot more chill about it, where I think when you worry too much about money, that almost causes you a lot of problems. Like, putting all of that negative energy into like the lack of money that you have kind of just creates more lack. And I've talked about this in a lot of my like law of attraction, sort of how to manifest money videos, which I'll link below. I think I covered Emily Elise's question in that last one. How do you personally determine and discuss rates with clients when you don't have an agent or manager to fight for you? So I have a team of people who help negotiate and do all of that for me. And that was a decision I made and manifested because I don't like doing that. Maybe you do. I don't think in all cases you need somebody to represent you, to be your agent or your manager, but I think for the most part, in the end, it's going to work to your advantage to just not be the person that talks about the money, especially if you're like the talent or the host. In my case, I position myself as the creator or the talent or the host, and I just don't think it's good for me to mix in talking about the money with clients. So I do have people that do that for me, and that was a decision I made. I think you have to decide what's best for you. It may be a skill you're good at, and maybe you want to control that more. In which case, if you think you can handle it and you can handle the workload and those types of conversations, then go ahead and do it. But I think the simple answer is I just don't like doing it. And so I've created a structure with my business where I don't have to do that. And I'm very thankful for that, actually. Pucks and Spuds says, how do you manage financial stress? Do you use a budget? Have you had to ask for monetary help from a family member? In my case, I never could ask my family for money. They've never been in a position to help me in that way. They did when I was a kid, obviously, provided me with what I needed, but I started working at like 13, 14, paper route, babysitting, and then I worked in retail from the time I was 15 or 16, and so I just paid, and I paid for school. I got school loans that I had to pay back, so I've just never been in a position to ask family for money, so I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what those conversations sound like. I mean, I know people who get help from their parents, which is great, but I just never been in a position to do that. So in terms of budgeting and managing financial stress, I think this goes back to a little bit more of that conversation about the energy you put into money and the energy and approach you have with your money and your bank account. And I think it has a lot to do with perspective and attitude, not actually so much the practical, like looking at the numbers and budgeting. Now, in the last couple years, I have budgeted more because I also have a company. So I have a company, I pay myself, and I have my personal financial budget of like how much money I need to live and how much I need to pay myself from my own company. So now I've started budgeting. I also have an accountant. So that helps too, because I need help with that. I'm not really good at budgeting. So I do pay an accountant to help me with that stuff and to do my bookkeeping for my company. If you're talking about like you just get paid from a company, you get a certain amount of salary and you're trying to budget so that you have enough money every month, you need to make a budget. You need to make a spreadsheet. There's templates all over the place, and you need to just know what are my expenses and what is my income and where am I netting out. You have to do a budget. If you're like so not connected to your finances and you're just like money in, money out, and you're accumulating debt and you just don't even have a grasp on like what your situation is, start making a budget. Like you really do need to have a picture there. While you're creating that picture, I really recommend doing it with love, doing it with the mentality of abundance, not doing it with a negative attitude. Oh, I'm so poor. Oh, I have no money. Those are affirmations that you're telling yourself, and you're just basically telling yourself that you want to be in more debt and that you don't want money and that you have sort of a poor man's mentality and a mentality of lack. And I'm a big believer in having an abundant mentality instead of a lackful mentality. And I really think that that energy and that intention, that affirmation that you put into money is going to change your situation, because money is just energy. It's like an exchange of energy. That's all it is. It should be treated as almost like a fun, playful thing. You might think I'm nuts, but as soon as I started doing this and having this perspective and attitude, I became more abundant and I became more secure and safe with money and my finances. So that's really what I believe in. I have other videos I'll link below talking about that, but if you just Google that kind of stuff, like manifesting money, like everyone's gonna say something similar to what I just said. So that's essentially it. If you wanna know a little bit more into my insights about money, manifesting money, I've linked those videos below and in the cards here. And if you wanna know more about the helpful and easy features of Interac e-transfer, make sure you check the link in the description as well to go to their website. Leave your questions below if you have anything else you wanna ask me, #AskLauren in your question in the comments here in the video so that I can search and find them. And I've got so many great questions from this call out that I'll be doing more episodes about awkward conversations relating to money, not relating to money. I got a lot of great stuff that I've saved from your questions. So thank you for watching. And I'll be here maybe mostly every Wednesday, vlogs, what I ate in a day, #AskLauren. And soon you will see where I'm living. I'll do a house tour, studio tour, the whole thing. But it's really fun and exciting, and it's a whole new 2018. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.